and welcome back to another YouTube recap. In this video, instead of taking you through a past life, I'm actually going to talk about what I do at the end of a session, which is contacting what I call the higher self. If you're doing a typical QHHT session, this would be called contacting the subconscious mind. And what this means is towards the end of the regression, after you visited the past lives, you get in touch with a source of all knowledge. So you can ask whatever the fuck you want. Dolores Cannon describes this as the greatest force in the universe. She didn't know what to call it, so she called it the subconscious mind. And they essentially said, we don't care what you call us. We don't really even have a name. We'll work with you. It can answer any question anybody wants, and it can provide instantaneous healing. It's a very powerful force. So in my sessions, I always do this after we go through the past lives, and this is where we get clarity on what was the point of seeing any of the past lives that we just went through, but also to ask any outstanding questions that my clients might have. And this might range from things going on in their personal life, like why am I together with this person, or why did I go through that breakup, or why am I experiencing this type of physical pain? It can be anything like that, but you can also ask literally anything going on in the world or going on in the universe. I will warn you that a lot of the information that comes through in this session is quite controversial. If you are someone that's easily offended or needs to tell people that they're wrong, please just leave right now. For what it's worth, the date of this regression was June 15th, 2022. I'm saying that because some of the information that comes through is very timely, and depending on when you're watching this video, I think it makes sense to know when this regression actually happened. I personally love this person's session just because it talks a lot about comedy and laughter. This person did stand up. I do memes, so it's perfect. So with that said, let's just jump right in. When things get very dark, laughter is the only way through. Singing helps, dancing helps, but laughter is the strongest. Comedy is the highest form of intelligence that human beings possess, and it's the most creative force that exists. And the way that they say laughter is medicine, the frequency your body creates when you laugh is healing the entire vessel. Even the sound of laughter is healing to other people around us. When many people get in a room and laugh together, it's very amazing how high the vibration gets in that space, and very quickly. In this part, my client's soul was described as a backwards spirit or a clown spirit. And so this is what the higher self essentially described that as. Backwards clown spirits are very ancient beings because they exist outside of normal binaries. They're not good or bad, they just exist, and they act as a sacred mirror of society. And the role of the clown is to reflect back. They are funhouse mirrors. They exaggerate things that are wrong in this society, and they magnify them. And the way that they're corrected is by recognizing the imbalance, laughing about it, and then making the proper adjustments. That's what pranks were originally supposed to be. A prank is when somebody got out of balance and their ego needed to be put in check. A prank would be put on them and it would teach them a very important lesson. When colonizers came, the first people they killed in lots of these groups were their clowns, because the clowns would poke holes in authority. The warrior lifetime we saw was important because it showed what true leadership was. She doesn't recognize anyone in authority currently that's a leader. And I want to say that the higher self or subconscious always talks in third person. So when it says she, they're referring to my client that is under regression. It's bite-sized way of getting the truth across. And right now, that's the way people work. Their minds work. The modern world requires modern solutions. And where lots of people get hung up is that they're trying to apply old traditions in a new world in a way that isn't working. All of these religions had their purpose. We're moving away from those dogmas now because they're essentially the same. They have the same principles, and people are getting too caught up in the rules, and a clown doesn't follow the rules. If you notice in your culture right now, comedy has come under very strict control of what can and cannot be said. That's very dangerous. That is very dangerous. When that happens in other times, society has collapsed. I then ask, so that's happened in other societies before? And she says, yes, as soon as the state and the ruling class controls what can and cannot be said. The best example that I can think of is the Reign of Terror, where people couldn't talk about how hungry they were. Comedy is a way of talking about how hungry we are. Everybody has a phone. Lots of spiritual people will denounce technology, but technology is an extension of humanity at this point. It's one of those things that just is, whether or not one likes it or how one uses it. But regardless, it has influence, and so there's many people who are put here right now who are interested in technology. There's a reason for that, because they were supposed to learn how to use it and they infiltrate it. They infiltrate it with light codes. So I elaborate, so it doesn't have to be a negative thing, right? And she says, yes, because these programs were designed to manipulate the mind. The social media platforms, they were designed with negative intention, but we can still use them positively because we know how they work. We use it against them, but it's in a way that's positive. It makes them mad. They censor. And then I ask, will they continue to get away with this censorship? And she laughs and goes, it's so funny. The comedic part is that they are going to start censoring so much that nobody will be able to say anything. You'll be able to say things, but people are going to be deactivated and censored for the silliest things, that people are going to leave these platforms for different ones because it's going to get so ridiculous. And then I go, will this media censorship wake more people up? And she says, oh, it is. It is. And then I say, so it's backfiring on them, right? And she goes, yes, everything they do is going to do that because it's so imbalanced. You don't even need the funhouse mirror. There are many who are activating. There are many clowns who are activating. And as soon as enough people are singing about things, joking about things, making media about things, that's when the collective mind shifts. It's only through the media that we consume. That's how we change our minds. Speaking to each other doesn't do as much as the actual subconscious reprogramming that media does, because media is storytelling, and storytelling is integral to human beings, and it changes how we see life. It will collapse under the weight because more people are awakening to the truth and sharing their truth. And every time, if you imagine a third dimensional matrix as a sphere, inside is the truth and outside is the illusion. Every time someone speaks truth, a crack goes into this, and she's gesturing in a sphere shape as she's doing this. And there's more and more cracks until eventually there is a critical mass that is reached and the whole thing collapses. And you're getting close, very close. I'm asking her if these cracks in the illusion have to do with awakening to the new earth. And she says, yes, the new earth is inside the egg. And I ask, can you describe what this would look like? She says, picture an egg hatching. The shell is the illusion and the empty thing that we've been living inside, the hollow vessel of what we are. The new earth is the life inside. And then I ask, so the egg is hatching, right? And she goes, yes, and we are seeing the first stirrings of it, seeing it wobble and shake, even literally. The earth is shaking, the earth is wobbling, the earth is trying to free itself from the constraints of the shell. I then ask, is there anything that needs to happen for this to work, or is it inevitable? And she says, everyone just needs to keep their truth, keep embodying their truth, and that's how the cracks in the egg happen. The shell is very thick. The shell is very, it's basically like lead, but the truth is like these lasers that just melts it. You can't stop the truth. You can't. You can delay it. You can try to cover it. But what people need to realize is it takes so much effort to hide and deceive. And there's so much energy that needs to be applied to that. Whereas the truth exists with nothing. The truth is there and nobody has to convince you. It just exists. So which is going to win? Something that's perpetual energy being applied to it, or something that exists infinitely forever with no effort at all? They tire themselves out. They're going to run out of gas. So I respond, so it's inevitable. And she goes, yes, they're going to run out of gas. I ask if this is something we'll see in our lifetime. And she says, yeah, we're seeing it now. We're seeing it now. I hope you guys know what I mean when I say the C word. It has been a big word over the past 2 years. I don't want to actually say it because censorship is actually real and I don't want to be censored. So here's what she says. The C word was a big crack in the egg, a huge crack in the egg. I ask, is there anything else that's coming? And she says, there will be 3. That was the first. There will be 3. 3 things that really, really open people's eyes. They're trying to stir up trouble again with the diseases, but they can only do that so many times because so many people were awake and watching already and caught the first one. And those people talk to other people who may have thought they were crazy. But if there's another one that people were already talking about a year ago, people are going to start catching on more and more. It's hard to say because there are so many possibilities depending on people's responses, but there will be 2 more things. One of them has to do with shortages. Shortages are scary to people, but after the shortages happen, everyone is going to have to become more localized because travel is going to be more expensive. Gas is getting too expensive for people to use it as much, and that's going to force communities to grow in the local sphere. And people are going to learn the skills of humans that need to be cultivated because humans were meant to be stewards of the earth. That's why they're so connected to the earth, to cultivate it and grow things and harvest and preserve things and have their feet on the earth. And the more that we're forced to, we are going to remember our humanity. The third thing is a result of the second one with the communities. Once the communities are formed in the physical reality, that is the final shift. And there may be other events that happen externally, but the most important part is the communities being made. And then that will lead to the final split. All of the people that are in the higher dimensions and spirit will finally be united in this realm. And once they're together physically, that is going to hold a lot of power. It's going to break grids down. Evil projections of illusion cannot survive when they're in this space together. It's too high frequency. It's too much. I then ask, so what's going to happen to lower vibrational beings or the beings that are doing these evil power plays or those that have just not awakened? What will happen to them? And she goes, they go down with the shift. So I ask, what will that look like? And she says, well, you see it now in a lot of ways. I'm sure you've come into contact with people who are living in that reality where they're experiencing a completely different world in their mind. Their fear consumes them and they are turning themselves into beings that are, and she said something that was inaudible. I have to be careful with how I say this. They're allowing themselves to be treated like lower consciousness, like they have a lower consciousness. And when you allow that, it becomes so. You're consenting to shrinking yourself to the status of essentially cattle. And we don't like to say it that way because cattle are also sentient, but you understand how animals are very motivated by fear. It's the same. They're easier to herd when they're afraid. Let's say it that way. In a reference to nuclear war, she goes, they love that one. They love that one to scare people. It's so scary, but picture a child on a playground who wants to be accepted by the other children through a distorted lens, bragging about how many guns their dad has. That is what these people are doing with nuclear war. They want to act like they have power, but in reality, they know they can't do anything with it. They can't. But the part that is confusing is the split. Let's just put it this way. They can convince the lower vibrational consciousness humans. They can convince them that nuclear war was happening if it wasn't. I ask if that's a possibility, and she goes, anything is at that point, yes. But the same way war was very theatrical in the lifetime that we looked at, even more so now. Think of war back then as watching a play. War now is like watching a movie with Hollywood special effects and actors and scripts. And the script is just being recycled and recycled, just with different characters. But it's the same movie, and hopefully many people will be bored by watching it again and again and again. But so many people fall for the magic tricks. I asked, so are these wars not actually happening and it's just being projected that way? And she says, they're happening, but we don't have the truth about them. Both sides are in on it. They're actors, essentially. And I don't say actors in the way that you're getting paid to act. It could be that case, but there's a level of society that exists that decides, and everyone else has to deal with it. And they don't care who dies, but it's all for a bigger plan. They have a bigger plan, and it's been in motion for many years. Notice a series of events that have happened. As soon as one winds down, one picks up. It's successive steps. It's not coincidental. I ask, so it's all planned? And she says, there were many options, but they wanted to involve key players. They wanted to bring in the old bad guys from the old movies. I ask what she means by that, and she goes, look at who the big bad guy is right now, Russia. Look who it was with the moon landing. And she starts laughing and goes, we know the moon landing, you know, theater. So then I asked, was the moon landing faked? And she's laughing hysterically at this point and is going, it's basically tinfoil and cotton balls. And you can watch it now and it's so obvious, but people wanted to believe it. There are people that do space travel, but that one was that was Hollywood. So I asked if we've ever been to the moon, and she says, yes, humans. And I asked, was this during the Apollo missions? And she goes, no, it's secret, the secret space program. There's what you call source energy, and it's hard to explain how, but it can split off. Little pieces can split off. Source energy is pure consciousness, and it wants every experience possible to know itself better. So pieces break off. I shouldn't say break, they separate with the intention of incarnating in different life forms so they can have new experiences. Some of them want to experience a lot. And then they go back and, for lack of a better word, download all their experiences back into the source energy. Some people can read this. It's what they know as the Akashic records as a way of accessing this. But essentially, it's a way of self-knowledge. And the oracles in the old times knew this because above the temples, it would say, know thyself. And that principle is so important because if you know yourself, you know life. And you know everything important that there is to know. Because the entire world exists inside of us, light and dark. And we have to meet all of those parts of ourselves. And so when source splits off, some lifetimes they're the bad guy and some lifetimes they're the good guy. And it's all one. I then ask her to elaborate on the concept of evil. And she goes, evil is a lack of consciousness, of love consciousness. There's different types of consciousness, and a soul can carry consciousness through, but actually evil comes from souls that aren't as aware of themselves as a soul. Evil is the one to forget where they came from and what they are. That's the best way to describe it. So after that, we moved along to asking more personal questions that she wanted to know about, but that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you're curious about asking your own subconscious or higher self questions, book a past life regression with me. I'd love to work with you. Until then, see you guys next time. I can't read. Oh my God, I'm so bad at reading.